Welcome to Sim Sundays by Gridfinder, and we're sponsored by Trak Racer. I still haven't really figured out an elegant way to do that little rigmarole, if you will. Welcome to episode 9. This is pretty cool because we're almost in double-digit numbers now, and, it's just something that Tom and I at one point just thought, it would be really fun getting on a podcast and just talking sim racing, because we get to talk about sim racing when we build Gridfinder all the time, but we don't really get to talk with community and race with the community as much as we'd like. So that's why we created this podcast. Tom, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. I actually can't believe that we're 9 episodes in. That's kind of crazy. It feels like we're still. Well, do you know what I was about to say? It feels like we're still finding our feet with this podcast. Okay. And Jake, who has had to watch you and I, well, mainly me, running around between different setups to get my audio right, because it's like the first time I've ever done it, will be like, I can't believe you've done 9.
Right.
So,
Super
episode, yes, ever the professionals, Chris. You know that we are top quality. So, episode 9, I'm incredibly excited because we have our second sim racing streamer on the podcast, but with a twist. So, introducing GP Laps, who specializes in vintage racing, IndyCar, NASCAR, F1, and classic racing sims, and has forced us to race a classic car today.
This one.
which has nearly killed me this afternoon. Introducing GP Laps. Hello and welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on your very professional show. Everything's been flawless so far, but excited to be here and excited to show you a little bit about what vintage racing is, because I've heard your initial reaction and I have a feeling we can change that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get as much practice time in the Lotus that we're going to be racing today as I wanted to originally. And this morning, as normal Sunday mornings go, Tom goes, "Hey, Chris, are you going to get some practice laps in?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll throw an hour or so later." He's like, "No, you're probably going to want to get in the car. Trust me, it's very difficult to drive." And he wasn't lying. Luckily, though, I did get the warning of, if you come out of the pits, don't plant your foot, because you'll just do a nice little spin a couple times. And and Tom, thank you for the tip there, because I was like, be very careful coming out of the pits and then off to the races. And then, of course, vintage cars are difficult. Downshifted instantly like it was, an F1 car, and then spinning on the first corner. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be a rough one. Thanks for picking these vintage cars, because I think it's going to be a real interesting race. And what made you kind of lean towards the vintage side of sim racing rather than, the typical, let's play ACC or let's play iRacing and race the normal stuff? I guess vintage is normal, but, what made you lean that way?
I think it's fine to say it's not normal, especially in sim racing, but I'm trying to change that a little bit. Now, it's funny, a lot of folks don't know, but I do all types of sim racing. I really only put the vintage and classic stuff on my YouTube, but I have Assetto Corsa Competizione, and I have, some of the iRacing and things, and race newer cars from time to time. But I've always really liked the romantic side of racing and the vintage classic. I feel like sim racing is a really unique way to experience history, which is something I'm generally interested in. And it's something that a lot of folks didn't seem to be doing. There's a strong but a small contingent which enjoy, which is reading about these historical events, reading about these historical tracks and things, and then using sim racing as a mechanism to experience that. I don't think you can do that in many mediums.
That's an interesting thing you say there, because the show Grand Tour, which is, it's done now, but I keep going back and watching through them because, I don't know, it's my lunchtime binge show, if you will. And, they go into those historic film and reporting where they drive the old car that's still around, and those lucky guys get to experience it in real life. We have to experience it in the sim world. And there was an interesting thing that happened when I looked at Watkins Glen, because that's where we're racing today. That's where we raced last week, but we raced the newly released ACC version of Watkins Glen, where it's the most up-to-date one that is available today if you go there.
So different.
And right, when I popped in there, I was like, wait a minute, this isn't Watkins Glen. I'm like, oh, wait, 60s. Right. Because
I was like, where's this came?
Right. That's funny you say that because I knew my braking point for the chicane, so I hit the brakes at that point and then turned straight into the hay bales right there.
I really enjoyed the mod, and we should get onto this a little bit about modding and historical mods. But I, as you probably did, Chris, found myself in the barriers quite a lot. And when you're up close to the barriers, you see the pictures, the people in the crowd. And obviously, when you're just going past, they just look normal, like a blur. It's just a person. You just kind of register its crowd. But then when you're like 3 feet away from them because you've just smashed your wheels up against the barrier again. It was like these 2D cutouts of
it's like cardboard people,
like gentlemen with with bowler hats and big lapels. I love the attention to detail on that mod.
Yeah, this the track that we're gonna race, so the Watkins Glen, it's made out of a '60s version of the track, and it's made by somebody named Sergio Loro. Sergio's been a modder for forever, as long as I've been doing sim racing. I feel like I think he came around during the Grand Prix Legends boom, so late '90s, early 2000s, and has had his hand in a lot of the really big successful tracks and things that have come out over the years. But F3 Classic Tracks is his offshoot that he started a while back, I think maybe even 10 years ago now, and does tracks for R Factor 2 and Assetto Corsa. And I take a look at a lot of his just because, the attention to detail is there. You can read about something. I did this on, he has one called the Terramar, which is a very obscure, high-ranked oval from Spain. And it's this track that was built and raced once and then abandoned because of finances and things. But he made this extremely detailed version of it, and because it's so obscure, to go learn about this. I had heard about it. I think Grand Tour actually went there on an episode. Funny enough.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
But other than that, I had never heard about it. And something I really enjoy about doing YouTube and streaming is learning myself. I'm saying all these histories and explaining this stuff to folks. I don't know all of this, from my knowledge up, so I get to learn a lot. And reading about it, I just had this moment where I was reading about how they have had this hotel inside of it, and I go look in the sim, and there it is. I can see the actual hotel. It's just a neat way to experience that type of stuff. But yeah, he's got great tracks. This Watkins Glen's a really nice one. And if you're a little lost, I'll give you one hint: the pit lane's in a different spot in the '60s than it was, is these days. It's actually after the modern turn one. So if you were to go through turn one on the modern circuit, that's where the pit lane used to be. Right before the S's, and that whole stretch up to the what do they call that? The carousel is the same. It changes a bit from there to the finish.
That was what was throwing me, I think, because when something is so similar but just not quite. And I got to the S's, and I was like, no, I know the S's, and it's quite cool because you have that massive grandstand, and the new track has those very kind of severe barriers on either side that obviously aren't there in the '60s. I was like, I kind of know where I am, but at the same time, it's so different. But had a lot of character, I thought. Yeah. And I imagine that must be one of the draws to racing the classic sims, is a lot of the tracks have to be modded. I don't think there's that many games that are kind of investing too much in the classic versions of the tracks. So it's all community driven. Now, you have your own community. I noticed that you have a Discord. How much of your community engages with the kind of in the kind of the historical accuracy of the tracks and the research, and how much do you all go into that as a group?
Quite a lot. I mean, the Discord came about from running an event. Actually, I needed to figure out a way to communicate with everybody, and turned into a community. We watch races together. We discuss mods and sims and things. But it definitely has a historical slant on it. We're not stopping folks from talking about new sims, and there's plenty of new racing, modern racing, I guess I'll call it, happening in there as well. But we have a whole channel dedicated to history where folks share pictures of things and we talk about them, or anytime any kind of new mod or game comes out that has anything historic in it, it's definitely mentioned there. So it's been nice. It's weird to think, I've got a community, but I guess it's definitely turned into that, and it's only growing. It's growing quite a lot lately.
So when you first started sim racing, did you just naturally gravitate towards the historic cars and the old stuff, or did you start like a lot of people with like, I don't know, Need for Speed or the more modern things, and then all of a sudden just one time you joined an event out of a whim, raced something historic, and then all of a sudden it grabbed you and kept you forever? What would you?
We'd be here a while.
How did you switch over?
Yeah, if you want to go through my sim history, we'd be here a little while.
Let's do it.
Been sim racing like over 25 years. I guess you'd call it sim racing, but it was just playing racing games when I first started, right? Back with the early Papyrus Sims. NASCAR Racing 1 was really one of my first racing games that I had. There weren't a lot of options then either. 1994. And it was what I was watching on TV, wanted to play something like it. And so NASCAR Racing 1 was kind of the start of simming in general. And I guess there wasn't a specific point in time where historic racing became the focus. And like I said, I still do plenty of modern racing here and there, but Grand Prix Legends and when that came out is really what started the heavy interest in historic racing. So 1998, about that came out. I think I maybe had gotten it a year later. Terrible at it. Everybody has the story that was around then of trying Grand Prix Legends and crashing 1,000 times. Because at the time, I was still racing on a keyboard, which sounds crazy, but wheels, joysticks fairly common. Wheels, who had a steering wheel for your desk that didn't exist? They did, but not everywhere. So that was the sim that made me get a joystick and eventually a wheel and move from there. And so that's a historic sim. It's totally based 1967 Formula One and has grown quite a bit from there, but it's all basically 1960s racing. And a lot of interest came from that for sure.
That's interesting because I remember racing with a keyboard. This comes up almost every episode for people who have been sim racing for a long period of time. But even when the joysticks started to come out, let's say the gamepad was out, it was still just buttons. It wasn't analog. So the closest thing you had was like a flight stick. And let's be honest, racing games with a flight stick is absolutely the worst experience ever.
Like, sure, somebody's good at it.
I'm sure there's always that one person that can play like GoldenEye with bongos or whatever on the internet, because people can do crazy things. But like, I remember when I had a flight stick, and then I got a new one, but it had like where you could turn it on its Z-axis, I guess that would be, instead of lean the controller back and forth. And that helped a lot because it kind of felt like a steering wheel in a way. But I just remember the old controllers just being almost the combat point of being able to be good at sim racing games. You're like, this is as good as I can get. I don't have complete control over any of these cars, Well,
I think something too that I'm happy that I guess I came up through it when I did, because I didn't really know what else was out there. Like, if you asked me in 1998 if folks had steering wheels, for this, I would say maybe at an arcade or something, but not not at home. So I didn't feel like I was missing out at all. Which these days, I mean, you see everything online all the time, and it's probably very easy. It is very easy to feel like you're missing out, right? But I agree with you. Racing with a flight joystick's not very intuitive, and
it just feels odd.
It does.
Now, have you been to the arcade since you've gotten a proper sim racing setup at home? Like, the Cruisin' USA sims at the arcade, or whatever those arcade-based steering wheel ones where you sit in the cockpit. They're terrible now. I remember when those were like the best racing experience you could get. You're like, all I want to do is go to the arcade and race in Cruisin' USA or whatever it may be. And now when I go sit in those little rigs, I'm like, what is this? There's no force feedback. The pedals are terrible. You can't control anything. Like,
I will say, I was in Seattle a couple years ago, and they had I wish I could remember the name of the game, but it was this drifting game that was heavily based on like the anime, which I don't follow
Initial
too much,
D.
but
I think it was Initial D.
I don't know if that's the name of the game, but yes, it definitely followed the Initial D type, Toyota, and everything. But that was actually decent. It actually had like some kind of force feedback and a big drift rim, and like that felt kind of cool. But yeah, I agree with you. Otherwise, they're kind of all over the place.
Yeah, when I go, my son's always like, "Well, you're gonna beat me because you have one of these in your office," and I'm like, "Ah, but this one's crappy." So who knows what's gonna happen now? And then it's an arcade game, so you get like the boosts and you jump your car and it does a backflip and all those crazy things. It's like it's not really sim racing. It's not the same thing. But I've played the initial D game, and one thing that was weird for me, being a United States-based driver, is the gear shift was on the left. Now Tom over there is probably like, "What? That's normal." But
You're quite right too.
it was the weirdest feeling. I'm like, I don't feel like I should be shifting on the left side, but being a US based driver. But that game was actually pretty good. I remember playing it when I was in Reno, Nevada, of all places, big casino town, kind of like a mini Vegas.
Yes.
Kind of interesting. So you're also a streamer in the sim racing space. When did you start your channel, and what made you want to start, like, because you said it's kind of weird to have like a community. What made you start to like really pursue the streaming and building a community and building a YouTube channel?
Yeah, this is another kind of long story. But I mean, I uploaded my first video to YouTube in like 2006 or something.
Okay.
So
Wow.
a long time ago. And,
Wow, nice.
then it wasn't like a thing, right? It was like I wanted to show or share something with folks. And I uploaded my first racing video that's still on there in 2008. And it was just me doing like a lap in Grand Prix Legends, and I wanted to put it up because I remember specifically saying, "Oh, there's not a lot of Grand Prix Legends on YouTube. I want to take a video of this. It's cool." But yeah, I started that back then, and I did on and off, and a lot of off over the years.
Sure.
I took a couple longer breaks, towards the end of my time in college and things like this, and it was actually just I guess 2020 that I had uploaded some stuff here and there, but I wasn't doing it at all, in an official way. And I was just watching a stream at one point. I think it was a Jimmy Broadbent stream, and it was like I should try to do this again. And so I just started uploading very consistently, and through this whole COVID time and everything, it's been a great hobby to really sink my teeth in. Have a little more time now than I used to.
Sure.
So I guess I really kind of kicked things off. I think at the time, I had just hit like 5,000 subscribers from all the years up to that point, and then things have really shot up since it became more consistent. But the streaming part, so your actual question with the streaming, because I do a lot of videos, but I started streaming around that same time too, and I'm not, I wasn't super involved with doing racing online at the time. I was doing a lot of single player stuff. So I was actually streaming, and I have been streaming some, single player championships and sims, and kind of doing a variety of different streams and things. But I have gotten more into the competitive racing again, started my own league this, past few months, and been doing that with streaming now. So I was actually looking at it the other day. Up until this past week, my last like 5 videos or things on my channel were streams, which is so flip-flop from how it was, even a year ago at this time.
What do you think you like better? Do you like the streaming and playing the game at the same time, interacting with your community live, or do you prefer to kind of like have your race, be able to then edit it if you want to, or just upload it and kind of interact with the community through comments? What would you say is your preference?
I think they're different mediums in a way. So they let me do different things. When I make videos, I can write a video. And, especially if I'm, going through a historic track or car or scenario, I can actually take some time and make sure I got all the facts right and present it well. And that's really nice. I very much enjoy video editing, and kind of fits that creative muscle that I have to make something that's, fun to watch, hopefully fun to watch for people. So, so making videos is really nice for that part. I always do, if I'm doing racing, I always do live commentary with it, whether it's online or offline, and stuff. So that part of it doesn't change. I will say, I think racing streamers are some of the best streamers in the world. It's a hard medium or a hard activity to multitask during, right?
Yeah.
To read comments, to do running commentary, to it isn't really just myself. It's anybody that does this. It's hard to do with racing specifically. So, but the live part of it is very exciting. I think I mentioned this at some point in a video or stream I did, but the live part of it definitely gets your heart rate going a little bit more. Whereas like the first, I remember it's kind of similar to the first time I ever raced online with other real folks, hearts beating. I don't want to mess up for them. I want to show them how good I am at this. We all have that feeling, right?
Yeah.
And over time that goes away a bit, unless it's a really big race. But you learn how to calm that down because it makes you perform better. Right? Exactly, the adrenaline. But and you learn, at least I think most of us do, to calm that down a little bit because it's going to make you perform better if you're calm. But that feeling is kind of fun. It means you're learning something new, doing something challenging, and I definitely get that streaming. Depends on what kind of stream it is, but definitely can get the adrenaline going, the heart pumping, and it's an exciting thing to do.
It's so challenging to perform to a decent level. So if you're in a competitive race as a streamer, but you're also thinking about everything else. So you're thinking about, have I got the right overlays up all the time? Or, I wonder how many people are watching and am I interacting with them on the chat and blah, 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 blah. It's given that racing itself is so dependent on this focus, this concentration. In fact, so I was about to say it's a rhythm, right? I went go-karting yesterday with my girlfriend, and afterwards she was like, it's kind of like a dance, isn't it? Because you go around a lap and you just have these moves that you have to hit. So it's like a straight and then a break and then a turn, and a straight and a break and a turn. And each one's slightly different, like in a dance routine. But the whole thing is a dance over a lap, and then you just repeat the same thing. Oh, that's quite an interesting analogy. But having to... Okay. Yeah, I kind of liked it afterwards. I was like, oh gosh, she's going to get good. She's going to start beating me. She's probably got into this ethos of racing, and now I'm terrified. Anyway, but my point is that to kind of maintain that rhythm and that pure focus whilst constantly getting notifications, because, chat is like notifications. It's like being in a go-kart but having your phone up and just responding to like notifications on your phone. It's so hard, right?
Yeah, it can be. I think it's important, to learn when to shut that off. But I mean, with streaming, that's the main part of it, right? Like I wouldn't stream if I didn't want to interact with folks. So I want to do that as much as I can. It's fun. I did last winter, I did a random like American Truck Simulator stream, which was super fun because I didn't need to look at where I was going at all and just talk to people the whole time. I've gotten really into doing, this is a great one for folks. So I've gotten really into doing rally over the past, not even year, 6 months or so, maybe a little bit longer. And with Richard Burns Rally, which is an older rally sim, but you're definitely up there, if not the best one. Once you get everything, going correctly, it's just such an amazing drive. But
that one's a little difficult to get set up though, because it's not even retailed anymore, right? You have to go find it and like get it working again.
Used to be, yeah. So, and this is the thing, it's trying to change the narrative on it because a group called Rally Sim Fans, which it's a Hungarian group, they have gone and created an installer package, and it's not. I would say it's about as easy as getting Assetto Corsa set up with like Content Manager. So it's not one click, but it's also not this huge project. So that's been good. But on a streaming topic with Rally offers this unique format where it's stage based. So I'm driving for 3 to 10 minutes, and then I stop and I can take a break and talk to people. And it's an interesting one. So you don't have to try to squeeze in reading the chat while you're actually driving or competing. You can focus 100% on it and then talk to folks after.
See, I agree with you 100% where racing streamers do something magical, because when I'm racing, I have to pay as much attention to everything as possible. I'm like, okay, where's the brake point? Here comes the brake point. Okay, I got to make sure I put the right pressure down on my brakes, and like I'm in ultra concentration mode. But like I used to stream and I did third person and first person shooters. Like you could just go hide off in a corner and like look at chat and do whatever you need to do in order to interact with people. But when you're a car going 200K down a straight, you're like, wait, the corner's coming. I can't exactly read this person's paragraph question that they want me to answer. So I agree with you 100% on it's really cool to see the people who are really good at it, because Tom, you've had a small stint in the racing and streaming environment when you were doing F1 streams way back when.
Yeah.
And, did you find it difficult?
Yes, I found it incredibly difficult because I made the mistake of trying to learn how to sim race at the same time as learn how to stream and I combined the two, which in hindsight was a really terrible idea. But the reason I did it is because it was just as we started Grid Finder, and I knew that so many people streamed, and I know that a lot of the leagues had a stream, and I wanted to understand the difficulties and the challenges they faced so that we could address them with Grid Finder. But yeah, I did enjoy it. And actually, Chris and I were having a conversation today about this podcast, and Lawrence De Souza, the streamer, came on and said one of his choices that people voted on for the race was actually a track day. So we went to the Nordschleife. He chose, I think it was 10 cars, and then we just did a track day. And my God, the pressure was off because, you're just driving around at like a 80% pace. Everyone's driving nice and close and allowing each other to make all these moves. So it was kind of interesting to watch from a viewer's point of view. But equally, Chris and I weren't sweating because we're like, we don't want to show up Grid Finder here by just being the two idiots at the back, because we are very much on the enthusiast level of sim racing. As in, we are lovers of sim racing generally, but in terms of talent, I'm speaking for myself here, Chris. I wouldn't dare to assume the same for you. But in terms of talent, we're very much the wannabes.
I think this is an excellent part about content creation with sim racing, but something hopefully I can help bring to it. I wouldn't consider myself, this amazing sim racer. I don't think that's why folks watch, me. And I wouldn't blame, I wouldn't blame them for not wanting to, but it's about the experience, with the history in sim racing. Learning about what you're doing adds so much to the whole experience, and it doesn't necessarily matter with the race. I have a ton of videos where I try out mods and do races, and I don't even say where I finish in it, or if I do, it's like 10th, or it doesn't matter. Because it's more about the experience, the feeling of it, trying something new. And I have a ton of fun just taking cars, and I think Assetto Corsa is a great sim for this, where you just take cars and go to tracks and just kind of drive them. You're not racing, you're not doing a head-to-head race, you're not racing online, you're just experiencing the car and the track and what that has to offer. It's kind of a motorist's hobby, if you will.
It does strike me that you're very much driven by your passion as a streamer. And I mean this in the most complimentary way, but it doesn't sound like there's a strategy for views. I've spoken to streamers in the past where like, I'm going to aim for this because I know that this reacts well as a thumbnail on YouTube, and I'm more likely to get a longer viewing time per person for this sort of thing, and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of strategy where it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you kind of do what you enjoy, and so be it.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I would be lying if I said you don't watch, view numbers. And if I try something out and nobody watches it, I'm gonna notice that. But yeah, I think this is actually what happened to me in the past too, when I was doing this. Before I really kicked things off and figured out my groove with it, is paying too much attention with metrics and things like that. Sim racing is a niche, and very few have been able to crawl out of that niche to make it, a much bigger thing than it is. And I'm very content if I have a group of folks watching me, if I'm doing a stream or if I do a video and I get a handful of comments, like I'm more than content with something like that. Because somebody that enjoyed what I was doing, I get to interact with them, and that's the end of it. It can get very exhausting if you're trying to focus on the numbers, and making it not a professional thing has been a big part of that as well. It's very easy to look at it and say, well, if I tried a bit harder, I spent more time on it and did things in this way, like could I turn this into an occupation? But that might ruin the fun of all of it. And so it's a difficult thing.
So you have 40,000. I was going to say it's quite a lot.
Yeah, it's grown. It's well. It's like easy to sit back and say, "Oh, I don't care about it," and you have a bunch of folks that have jumped in, but it's built over time, and it's slowed down at points and grown at other points. But yeah, like you said, Tom, it's definitely a passion project for me, and the more I can find new things to enjoy and share them with others and hear back from them, the more fun it is overall.
So what do you think the catalyst was you said you were 5,000 up to about 2020, and then it went up to 40,000. Was it a particular style, or was it that you moved to I don't know, ACC, or was it just COVID? What do you think it was that kind of propelled you?
Well, COVID, yeah, it really was that I made videos. Like there was a point, I think I went 3 years without posting anything on the channel. And meanwhile, I'm still sim racing. I'm still enjoying this myself, but at various points it felt like a lot of work, or I didn't want to do the thing I know people wanted me to do. So yeah, it was a change in mindset and saying that I don't feel like I need to do the one thing. Because I guess, if you look back a little ways, things started to grow the first time I was doing an offline racing series where I'm racing through Grand Prix Legends as if I'm a driver from the 1960s. And I did the full 1965 season, every single race, every non-championship race, full, realistic grids for every race, so driver swaps and car changes. And I built a little narrative. It wasn't this heavy role play, but just a little bit. At one point I crashed into my Ferrari teammate, an honest crash. So the next race I got fired from Ferrari and I was driving for a different team from there. So just like this type of kind of role play thing. And folks really liked that. That was like my initial thing. I had a lot of fun doing it, but that felt like the only thing I was able to do on YouTube and making videos. If I wasn't doing that, every comment was, where's the next one? Why aren't you doing this? But you build the audience that you make content for. So yeah, the first Assetto Corsa video I did, the first mod review I did, there's a lot of comments saying, hey, do more of this or that. But the 5th, the 6th, the 10th one, I have an audience that watches that now, as well as the audience that does this. And I try to keep all the balls spinning all the time. I have 100 different things that I'm doing all at the same time, but much more fun that way. If I'm right now, I'm working on a review, part of my casual review series where it's really just a play of a game. It's not an in-depth review. It's not a documentary, but just trying out an old game, playing an N64 Formula One title right now that I just have a lot of nostalgia for. It's totally random. I don't think anybody's going to expect that I would do a video on that. But I know there's a group that enjoy that kind of like random, here's an old sim or old mod or something that's neat. So
with a wheel?
With a wheel, yeah. I got the wheel working with it. So I'm awful with a controller, because I don't do it a lot. Some folks are really good at it. We actually have one guy in our league right now who races on a controller, and you'd never know. He's so quick and so proficient. But yeah, for this, I got the wheel working just for fun. I'm not even going to show it on the video, but it's just the way I'm comfortable controlling a race car is with a wheel. So.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. And since you've stuck with your YouTube channel, I think eventually, if you make enough content and the people who jump from content to content, they start to like you rather than that pretend world, the role play thing you did or the reviews that you do. They start to like you as a content creator, and they kind of glue to just your presentation style and the things that you pick. So good job on sticking with it, because I've tried a couple different times to do different YouTube projects, right, Tom? And I don't know, I do the same thing where you get burnt out over time and then you just kind of drop it. So
yeah, I think things that I'd recommend. I don't know if I have the key to success for YouTube, because it's really not what I'm going after. But some things I recommend that have worked for me to not burn out are, don't do the things that you read about. Don't set a release schedule. Don't make a specific type of video or content because that's the next one and thing you have to do like that. Don't set yourself up. Don't run it like a business. It's a hobby. Take 3 weeks off. Post 4 times in 1 week. I post videos at the worst times. I know it's bad to post a video at 2 a.m., but I just finished making it. I'm very excited about it. I'm going to put it up. Yeah, I don't care. I'm going to talk to the 3 people that see it at that time, and then hopefully YouTube decides to pick it up and show it to some others. But I'm on to the next video right after I'm done it anyway. So I think you just got to have fun with it, because on the off chance that you get a big following, and I'm talking like the big time ones, then it's kind of luck at that point anyway. So you might as well have fun getting there.
Well, Tom, we were supposed to win, I want to say it was F1 2021 even. Which one was the first one to have a co-op campaign? You and I said, when that game drops, we're going to go through the co-op campaign together on stream. and then we just
were.
never did it.
No, I think that was 20. I'm going to say that's 2021 that came out, and that was.
I thought so.
The idea was though, and this is probably this is probably the reason it didn't happen. Is Chris and I work in sim racing a lot. I'm full time. My day job is sim racing, so I was like, I need to fall back in love with sim racing, because I had that classic thing of like, ugh, I do all day sim racing. The last thing I want to do at the end of the day is sim racing, which is a really bad attitude to have. So I thought, well, I need to fall back in love with sim racing. So I thought, oh, Chris, why don't we do the co-op? And that can be like our little thing, like on a Friday or whatever. We'll just go and do the co-op campaign. And then we're like, well, why don't we stream it? Because like that's just how our mind works. It's like, if we're going to do it, let's stream it and see if we can make it a thing. And then all of a sudden, it was no longer just for fun. Right. Whereas I feel like once you've streamed for long enough and you're just so comfortable with getting in the rig, pressing the buttons that you need to press, not having a massive audio mare like I do every single week, you can just go and just enjoy it, and people will watch because you're enjoying it. And I feel like we didn't get to that stage.
Yeah, I mean, part of it too is still enjoying stuff, maybe not recording it and not being live. At least for me, I still do a lot of racing without recording it or intending to. I certainly do a lot of like practice and testing things and to make content, but when the new ACC stuff came out, I spent a couple nights tooling around in that. I have no intention ever to go start streaming or race competitively in that, but it's fun to see the tracks and watch somebody else stream while I try to figure out how the Porsche's buttons work and stuff. So I think it's important to still not make content and still enjoy the hobby for what it is if you can. And
I 100% agree with that. 100%. Okay, guys, so we have about 8 minutes left in practice, and then it's going to go into quali, so we should probably hop in there, throw in some laps together, and, see where we can get.
I know a small group of folks from my community joined this, and they're very good.
Oh, no.
So we'll see.
I'll just make sure to put a mod on their car and balance of power, whatever.
Yeah, I know a few of them are quite talented. So I see a few familiar names from our league that we're racing in. So they're very capable.
We also
let's get on in there and throw some laps together and see how we fare.
This could be our opportunity, Chris. This could be the first episode that all three of us finish a race. It's not happened yet.
Thank you for jinxing all of that. Well, last time you didn't get to race with us, so you and I didn't hit each other. So we probably have to just at least hit each other once to keep the trend going, right? Because every single race that we've been together on the track, I think I've run into you at some point. So,
would you guys like some? Would you like some tips on driving classic cars?
Ooh, yes. I'm going to jump across to my rig then.
Do that, yeah. Because it's very different.
It is. So, like I was saying in the beginning of the episode, I got into the car and I just naturally, my brain went into autopilot, if you will, and I just kind of was driving the same way I'd drive like a GT3 or an F1 car. And so in the first corner, when I want to go slow down, I'm like, oh, okay, I have a normal cadence of downshifting. Right. And I downshift and my car just goes and spins in 360s all the way out into the fence on the outer limits. And I was like, okay,
I mean, you're driving like you have that 70 to 100 years of racing development.
Yeah, exactly.
With the car and everything, and you have to kind of unwind yourself from all of the things like downforce and modern suspension and modern tires, and understand what the car can actually do and is capable of. And are you using paddle shifters for it?
I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually tried with the H pattern earlier today. And it did
you have one now?
Yes, there's a Fanatec.
I didn't know you had one.
Yeah, H pattern, and I tried it. It was not ideal, if I'm being perfectly honest. It didn't go as well as I was hoping it would go.
It takes practice like anything, but if you're using paddle shifters, which you totally can, but you have to remember mechanical gearbox, and it's meant to be an H pattern, so you can't fire down gears like you could in a modern car.
That's the problem I had is I downshift once and I started to slide a little bit, but I kept going, and then I just straight off the track in a nice 360 pattern.
I think I'm coming up right behind you here, right to your left.
Yep, I see you. There's a ghost driving the car. I guess I have drivers hidden or something like that, so I can't even see you in there.
Oh. Yeah, the biggest thing I see when folks jump in an older car, especially an old Grand Prix car like this. So this is Jim Clark's 1962 Lotus 25. And I think he won Watkins Glen that year in this car. So we've got a good one for it.
So when we jumped in here, since I do watch Grand Tour, Richard Hammond got to drive this car.
Oh, nice.
No way.
And I remember that episode.
Yeah, it's a really cool car. But the biggest thing I notice when folks drive older cars at first is they brake way too late. Because the car, the suspension, no aero, the tires, they're so small. You really don't have a lot to help you get through the corner. So you need to really back up braking zones. And I try to tell folks, try to get on the accelerator at the apex. So you want to be slow enough where you can get back to the accelerator at the apex of the corner. That's generally a good mentality to go into it with.
Was it Jackie Stewart who said that you shouldn't get onto the accelerator until you're prepared to commit to the accelerator all the way for the rest of the corner? Maybe, is that why?
Yeah, it might be. I don't know if I remember that specific quote from him. I know he's got a lot of quotes around driving smoothly and things, but that could be why. Yeah, these kind of cars rotate a lot with the throttle. So if you don't use the throttle at all, you might actually just run wide going through a corner or past the end of a corner. But the throttle itself, especially when you're at the limit, can help rotate the car and get it to turn quite a bit. As I almost run wide there.
Final corner is so hard. You have to really crank the wheel on. You have to go so much slower than you think as well.
Yeah, all the way down to first gear for that one.
I noticed the track is just so bumpy.
Yeah, I also feel like the car rolls around quite a lot.
Yeah, it's got a pretty soft suspension, but the cars then did. They thought it would really help with the bumpy track, just help make the ride a bit smoother.
Right.
Sure.
So,
but yeah, the
Jay,
final corner is tight. Yeah.
Did your love of sim racing start with the racing games, or did it start with an interest in motorsport?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was actually hoping we'd talk about that a little bit too. It's definitely a combination. Definitely watching racing, seeing racing live or on TV probably is where it started for me, but then using a simulator or a game to recreate what I was seeing or feel like, in a way, I never was fooled to think I was taking part in it, but, feel like you have that experience a little bit, was one of the big draws to me, but then also helped enhance watching racing as well. When you do, obviously not this because this isn't on anymore, but you go and watch a NASCAR race and then go take some laps at that same track. I feel like I understand, even if a little bit more, what those drivers are going through and have to understand. And it just helps enhance the whole thing. It complements really well being a racing fan.
Yeah, I've noticed that with Formula One massively. I was a Formula One fan for a little while, but I kind of watched, the sense of speed I quite liked. I like the cars racing close to each other. But the tracks, to me, there were some tracks like Monaco, for example, and Singapore. They had their a distinct character that you get from TV. But a lot of the tracks, if you take a Hungary versus an Austria, if you're just watching it on TV, the difference I don't think is massive. Whereas when you've raced it in the sim, each corner now all of a sudden has a character. So each corner, right, okay, so, that's a third gear corner. I know that it's quite a long corner. This one's got a late apex. This one is going to be a nightmare to overtake. So then when you watch it on TV, you're kind of putting together those characters a little bit more. So you kind of gain an extra layer in the race, I think, as a viewer.
Yeah, I feel like I was watching a race with my girlfriend not too long ago, and I was saying, oh, they're going to overtake, coming to this next corner. Probably before the commentators said anything, just because of the way they were lining them up. And I have to think that's because of sim racing that I'm able to see that type of thing. I watch a lot of racing, but not enough watching to know exactly what kind of move a driver's going to make. It's the sims which really help you understand what's possible to do in a car and what's difficult, and I think they're just such a great compliment for being a race fan overall.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, and you kind of appreciate it more as well, right? Now, nobody here is going to claim that sim racing has the same sense of jeopardy, or maybe not the same kind of skill as real racing. But when you've done a few laps around a track in a particular car, and then you see somebody doing it for real, knowing that, okay, if they get that wrong, they can't just hit escape, return to pits. They're going to just, hopefully they haven't broken their neck, and then it's going to cost them several £1 million, and they're going to have to do the walk of shame with the helmet on into the garage. Like, you don't have that in sim racing, but you kind of appreciate it more when you watch, I think.
Yeah, the danger aspect, I guess, with historic racing as well, that's always something that comes up when folks talk about the old days, right, and how dangerous it was, because it was dangerous, but definitely is something I see a lot of comments on. I can't say that I think of it quite as much myself, but I get a lot of comments about how brave drivers were, back in the 60s and 70s and before that. And especially when I'm taking a look at a circuit such as this, people comment a lot about the safety of it and the fact that there really isn't any by our modern standards. It's a ditch on the side of the road. That's the safety. So, yeah, it's pretty wild. And I think that's another cool thing about historic racing is obviously at places like Goodwood,
oh my God,
they do take the cars out and properly thrash them. But otherwise, there's not a lot of actual historic racing, taking place where in sim racing, it's all right if we break this Lotus 25,
Yeah. Whereas you'd feel pretty terrible if you had an opportunity to drive a real one and then crashed it, right?
Oh, I would go so slow in real life. That's the thing. I would never trust myself
35.
to actually put my foot in it. No. I would love to at some point. I would absolutely love to drive a vintage car, but yeah, I'm going very slow, let me tell you.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously why I'm 19th at the moment, because I like to respect the cars as if they're real.
Yes.
So I didn't want to go too fast. So I was in the low 22s at the beginning of the day. Oh, wow. There are some fast people in here.
Yeah, I was doing a race a little bit earlier. We had some folks in the 15. Wow, they're in the 15s now. We were in the 16s before.
Wow.
We'll see if I can put a quali lap together, but it'll be a little harder now with commentating.
Well,
one thing, so I hit the tires on the edge at one point, and there's a lot of debate on like Twitter and things about sausage curbs right now with racers and things like that, and I hit the tire barriers on the side and just flew, and I'm like, okay, so sausage curbs are bad right now, obviously. Like that one, I think it was F2 race where the guy jumped and literally hit straight into the halo.
Yeah,
and look at these. Like, these cars don't have the modern suspension, and it's just a tire that's halfway buried into the ground about 50 yards apart, just on repeat around a corner. And, like, you can't even put your car... There's no green zone. There's no big, nice, soft curb. There's no runoff. It's just grass, buried tires.
Part of that, it's funny that there's so many folks that really like vintage racing and complain about all the stuff you just said that modern tracks have that vintage ones don't, and that's what makes the vintage ones so much better. I don't think personally I wouldn't for a second want to reduce the safety in modern racing. I don't enjoy watching folks risk life necessarily, especially for things that we know we can fix easily. But there is such a thrill in historic racing and watching old footage like I don't know if you've all seen Le Mans from Steve McQueen or Frankenheimer's Grand Prix '66 movie. Watching those old movies and sorry, what was that?
I was gonna say there's a romance, isn't there, watching old racing?
There is, and doing it as well in sims on historic tracks. It's one thing to take a car out like this and go to the modern Nürburgring and do a couple laps. It's fun enough. I would have a good time doing that. But doing it on a vintage version of the Nordschleife, which there is a good one for Assetto Corsa, it brings it up to a totally different level. There's no barriers. It's a very narrow road. There's a lot of bumps. It just makes it so much more exciting and really shows you what these cars can do in their natural habitat. Because on a smooth track, this car is pretty docile, and it's it could be classified as slow, depending on what you're used to.
Yeah. Ooh, yellow already.
Uh-oh. Saw people sink through the ground in front of me.
Oh, yeah, I've had the same thing.
Uh-oh, we might have all got disconnected, looks like.
I'm still...
Yeah, just don't...
connection issue. The server seems to be unavailable. Let's see what I gotta stop the car before I can hit escape. Let's see. Did the server completely die on us?
Yeah, I'm gonna try joining again.
Okay, let's hit refresh here.
I wonder if it'll let us back in with Core. We had this last time as well. I think we'd probably be flattering ourselves if we suggested we're getting DDoSed. I don't think we're big enough to be.
No,
I hope not.
Last time it was just Aris that disconnected because I was still on the race just fine.
Right. Okay. So the server has restarted, so I can skip to next session through Emperor servers.
Yeah, let's do that.
Just give me a moment. I will do that. So, Jake, something that always blows my mind with sim racing is the amount of community that's behind it, right? So the communities that come together and build incredible things. Now, I've seen quite a lot, and I'm not massively into the historical sim racing world. So, just generally, whenever I see somebody, even just doing a mod, it blows my mind. But I imagine you have seen some incredible projects where sim racers have come together for the pure passion and built something incredible.
There's so many of them. Some of the stuff that folks are able to build, whether it be tracks or cars, or beyond that, based off of the resources that are available as well. So you have to understand, there's not laser scans of tracks like this. Sergio built this off of photographs and videos.
Wow.
And Watkins Glen is a very
impressive.
And some maps. There's maps and things, but there's no scan of the track in the 60s. So you have to interpret it, try to make it look as real as possible. And I think he's done a great job on this. But this Watkins Glen is a very well covered facility. So imagine trying to do something like the Spanish track he did, or one of my favorite stories in sim racing modding, and I did a video on it a while back, is the Targa Florio circuit that was made for Grand Prix Legends. And if folks that are watching are curious about that, I couldn't possibly explain it all here, but it's just an incredible. The track itself is 72 kilometers long, over 40 miles, and it goes through the Sicilian countryside. And this group of dedicated modders, worked on this for years and built a full rendition of it in Grand Prix Legends, and actually did a race on it a couple weeks ago. My first ever actual Targa Florio against real competitors, and did all right. So it's an insane story. Never mind the circuit itself, which is also, quite crazy.
I also love that these games are being kept alive by communities as well. So, the game manufacturers themselves and the platforms like Steam or whatever might not support them, but as long as there is an active community of fans, they will live, because, as you said, people like the Hungarian group making their own launches for games. That's so cool.
It's really cool. I'll cut you off there, but I think partly because I came up through Sims and I played these things when they were new to an extent. I do always wonder, if I was showing this to somebody that is brand new to sim racing or is younger, do they see the same thing I see? Can I get the bad graphics or whatever you'd call it? Can I take that away, and can they actually see how great this is? Because I think we're in a really awesome time. Folks always focus on the latest and greatest, but we have such an amazing back catalog of Sims. 25 years at least of Sims that all do unique things and different things. Of course, some newer ones do some things better, but some of the older Sims do some things better than the newer ones do. And so I just kind of enjoy all of it.
What would you say that some of the older Sims do better than the new ones?
The biggest thing is AI, artificial intelligence, which, for some folks doesn't matter at all because you only race online. But if you do offline racing, there was kind of a sweet spot around the 2003, 2004 time period where you had NASCAR 2003 from Papyrus, you had Grand Prix 4 from Jeff Crammond, you had GTR 2 from Simbin.
GTR2 is kind of has legendary status in the hearts of a lot of sim racers. It's one of the first ones that I heard of when I started Grid Finder, and we had like F1, AC, iRacing, R Factor 2, and maybe Forza. The next one that somebody requested, I remember, was GTR2, and I was like, what the hell is this game? Never even heard of it.
Yeah, GTR2 is wild. There's some crazy mods out there for that game too, but it's and the creators of ACC started doing a lot with modding for that game as well. But there's just so many good sims out there, and if you can get past the setup process, which is becoming easier all the time. People are making tutorials and they're making installers, and you got to give the sims a chance. You got to get your equipment set up to work well with them, but you can have some really fun times in sims from the last 25 years. And I go way back and play some of the older things. I did a stream where I raced 1989's Indy 500 and did the full race, and it was one of the most fun things that I've done. And that's a game that runs at 320 by 200 and doesn't have force feedback or anything like that, obviously, but it's an incredible sim, not only to see what they were able to do at the time, but once you really get the hang of it, you can see how much is actually there. And it's not just a pixelated mess, it's a real simulator under the hood.
I also love how these games aren't just being kept alive by modders, but actually made better. Like, take this game that we're playing right now. Like, without modders, I think most people would have moved on from Assetto Corsa, and that is not an insult to Assetto. We had Aris from Assetto Corsa on last week, and the processes that they go through and the passion that's gone into this game is absolutely incredible. But what I mean is 99% of people that I know who play Assetto Corsa are on there because they play some kind of mod, or some kind of modded track or modded car, or even if they just race with a community, it's the community that is really bringing this kind of immortalizing this kind of game.
Yeah, it's an amazing sandbox of a simulator, and the historic content, it has to be. Assetto Corsa might be the best historic sim at the moment. If it had offline racing, I think it would be complete. It does, obviously, but that's probably its weakest point in my opinion, especially for these types of cars. The AI have such a tough time with them. But some of the tracks and cars and things available are, you just can't find them elsewhere, and there's some really good stuff. I also do think, though, that Assetto Corsa suffers from the fact that it has so many mods for it. It could be tough to find the really good ones.
Yes. Because not all mods are created equally, right? Now, Aris was saying that some are absolutely incredible, and they've gone to huge lengths to recreate these cars, and then others kind of give the rest of the community a bad name because they're ripped mods, or they're just poor quality, and then it reflects badly on the game, right? But kudos to Kunos, nice phrase, for kind of just allowing mods and embracing that modding culture.
Yeah, kind of fulfilled R Factor. The original R Factor was kind of that sim, I guess a decade or 2 decades ago, and this is now absolutely fulfilled that same space. But it's so cool, and it's so much fun to see what's coming out each week. I know a modder, Pesio, just released Eagle 1967 F1 car, and
cool.
Been fun to throw around a few tracks, but new stuff coming out all the time.
So GP, what wheel and pedal set do you race with?
Yeah, I am using a CSL Elite wheel, and I've got a bunch of different rims for it. Once we're done racing, I can show it to you. But I'm a big fan of vintage racing, obviously, and so I like to have some of the different steering wheels and things that fit the cars better. So I'm using a small, 270 millimeter round rim with no buttons, no shifters, nothing on it.
Nice.
And for pedals, I've got some Husingfeld Sprints that they very kindly gifted to me.
Oh wow!
Which is so nice, and they've been great to use and get used to. It took a little while to get used to the load cell braking, because I never had done that before. But now that I'm used to it, it'd be hard to go back. It would definitely be hard to go back.
Right. Yeah. When I went all in on everything, I did everything Fanatec, because back when I was racing on Logitech wheels, basically forever, Fanatec was like the end goal, right? It's like, oh, if I could only get one of those. And then just still in my mind, Fanatec was like what I wanted to get. And now, knowing what I know, some Husenfelds would be nice, and change the actual direct drive wheelbase and all that stuff probably. But I went with the Fanatec stuff, and I'm happy with it. I mean, I guess I don't really know any different. So like, I've never raced on any sprints. I've never used any of the SimiCube stuff. So I guess I don't know that it would be better. And sim racing is one of those hobbies where at some point you just have to be like, okay, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I'm not buying any more wheels. I'm not buying any more stuff until something breaks.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for years I raced on a desk, and up to not till that long ago, I actually raced on a desk. And I had a G27 that I used for almost a decade, and I honestly had just as much fun with that as I do with all this stuff. It's great to have nice equipment, but it doesn't really bar you from having a lot of fun with sim racing overall. And I it can make you more confident, maybe, and more consistent, but I think you can be just as fast with anything once you get used to it. Getting used to it's really the hard part.
I was fortunate enough to go to the Sim Racing Expo last year and try out quite a lot of equipment. And what I found was that none of the equipment I would necessarily say came across to me as, say, better or worse, just different. Like different direct drive systems that I was trying. They all felt slightly different. Now, somebody who kind of knows the technical side of it will be like, oh, well, this one's better because of the Newton meters, or it's higher fidelity at the lower force feedback, or blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
What I came away thinking is they're all going to feel different, and so different racing styles, different drivers are going to react more or less positively or negatively to a particular feel that they get through these direct drives. And the same with the wheels, like the McLaren wheel rim it was kind of for the CSL DD, but of course you can put it on anything. That was their star product, and everybody loved it. There was the queue to go and try that was massive because it was a good price point, and it's a good wheel, good buttons and good options, and it's a GT3 wheel and blah 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 blah. It just didn't fit my hands. I couldn't stand it. Like on paper, I looked at it and I was like, I really wanted to go there and buy one like that. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, but it just didn't fit in my hands. So I was like, this is so uncomfortable. So obviously didn't buy one, but it just made me realize that all of this stuff is gonna be different for different people.
You probably can't see. I don't know if you can see the camera, but this is not the wheel rim I'm using right now. But I have a few different ones that I like to use, just like the no buttons, no extra things from driving different classic cars. I've got a little button box so I can do some of the key things off to the side, but it's so nice to just grip a big steering wheel. Really make yourself feel like you're driving that actual car. That was one of the things that attracted me to getting into, getting a better setup to begin with, or a different setup. But yeah, it's an interesting thing because there's some people that really focus on the gear side of it. Like that's what they do in sim racing, is having the best gear, and God bless them, because that means we can benefit from all the knowledge share and all that. But it's definitely not my area. I mean, I'm very happy with what I have now, and I'm sure at some point I'll get something different, but I could see myself racing on this for quite a while.
Yeah, I just bought the round wheel and the F1. That's it. And then I pretty much race everything with my F1 wheel. I don't know, I like the feel of it better. But the round wheel, obviously, for some of the ones where you have to have an H-pattern shifter and you have to go a couple revolutions around to get the wheels all the way around, you can't really use an F1 shaped wheel,
right,
and do the hand transfer. I personally can't do that.
I was surprised. You're brave driving these cars with that.
I was gonna do the round wheel, and then I don't know, and I just strapped this one on, and I was like, well, I guess this is good enough for me.
Exactly.
I'm racing with a GT3 wheel at the moment, and it's quite good.
Yeah.
The only other
this
wheel
car.
want to try is that BMW Fanatec one that's ridiculously expensive.
Really nice.
I do have the I have the Formula Rim, but the only thing I usually drive that would require something like that is an IndyCar, and I don't drive modern Indy cars enough, so I don't get a lot of use out of it.
Yeah, when I'm doing sim racing, I'm normally in an F1 car or a GT car, so like it kind of fits all of them. And also, I like the shifters better than on my round wheel, because the shifters are kind of gummy on the round wheel and squishy, and I like the real snappy feel of these ones, so I always stick with this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that BMW wheel, isn't it like $3,000 or something like that? I'd want to try it just to try it. Never something I would ever buy, but I'm like, okay, can I tell the difference between this $3,000 wheel and my F1 Fanatec? Honestly speaking, probably not. It's a little bigger, so I'd obviously feel that, but it's probably about the same size as my round BMW one that I have. But I just need to get better at sim racing in general, because I'm such a casual sim racer at this point that my go-to games are like Forza Horizon and stuff that are just open world and like sandbox style.
Hey, those are
games.
fun. I did a stream once with Forza. We just went when the new one came out and just went through all the cars that it had, and I think I spent most of the stream in the dealership or the store, and looking at all the cars and kind of obsessing over all the historic cars. It was a lot of fun.
I also, in Forza Horizon 4 is the last one I played a ton of, and of course I bought all of the cars where someone made them look exactly like the Fast and the Furious cars, because I was a fan of the movies, of course, because they came out when I was in high school, and it's just, I don't know, it's kind of fun to be in Paul Walker's little orange Supra and racing around. And where was 4? I can't remember what country 4 was in, but you get into the cities and into the mountains and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. I haven't played the new one yet, though.
All right, so we got a 20-minute race here, huh?
Yes.
20-minute race. Let's see. How many times have you guys gone off the track? I'm assuming, GP, you have not gone off the track. But Tom, have you met the fence out on the outer distance yet?
I have met the fence a couple of times, but I'm back into it now, and I was on for a 122.0 before, which would get me.
That's not bad.
16th.
That's not bad.
So I'm going to be aiming for 16th position in this race. But this is a tight field. I got crashed into by Tom O'Farrell, and I'm fairly convinced it's because we were chatting today, and he's found some bugs on the website, Chris. I think that was punishment.
So he took you out.
Yeah, so he submitted a ticket and also sent me into the barrier, which I think is fair enough. I respect that.
Okay, I'll take that, right?
Yeah. Jake, 5th. Nice.
Yeah, I think I saw we have Frank on the pole, and he races in our. So I got a historic road racing championship league that we've started. He's a part of that league. I think Alessandro in here is part of that league. Got Yannick right next to me, who's a very prolific historic racer. So it's nice to see some familiar names in here as well.
Nice.
Got the inside line though, which is going to be good.
Oh yeah, I'm in the middle.
I'm right behind you.
The grids are tight. The grids are tight.
Oh god, what could possibly go wrong? Right, Chris, we have to finish the race.
I think you'll do quite well finishing. If you finish the race, I think you'll do the biggest. Like I said when we were driving, though, the braking is the biggest thing that gets folks on the older cars, and it's really if you miss your braking point, you cannot recover from it. There isn't a way to like crank more wheel in, and so I would just brake very early until and really look at your braking markers, and that can get you a long way.
Yeah. Talking about recovery, if you miss your break point, you're off into the distance.
Try something that's heavy too, like a 50s Formula One car that has a lot of weight to it. I mean, you're going off the road very easily if you miss your braking points. This car is very light, but it's still you have to obey the no downforce.
Yeah, that is the problem, because you kind of realize, don't you? So as I've done it a couple of times where I've missed my braking point, and you try and do that kind of trail braking thing, which I'm not sure works too well. Maybe I just haven't got it working. I'm like, oh, I'm going off. Oh.
I basically just try to make it so that my car is still pointing the right direction when I finally do stop.
Yeah.
There's been a couple times where I flip all over the place because the edge of the track too has those berms that are just jumps if you miss.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of Assetto Corsa. Yeah, I think in real life you might just get stopped by those, but yeah, they're kind of ramps in this, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. It's interesting to hit those. Okay, well, I apologize to anybody that I make contact with before the race starts. Here we go. 30 seconds. Look off into the side though and look at those fabulous player models that we have on the outskirts of the track. They're just as minimum effort as possible because you're flying by them and it doesn't matter, but when you're sitting here at the start it's like those look
but actually some of them are in like
great.
costume. Some of them are like 60s costume. Right,
here we
good
go.
luck, all.
Right, need a good
luck,
start.
Guys.
Now I'm going to assume that I'm not going to be flooring it.
You can spin the wheels if you want.
Oh, nearly lost it. Oh, somebody's lost it in front of me. Oh, God. Oh, God. I think I'm around the outside. I'm up a few places.
Oh, we got somebody spinning out up front.
Oh, that is...
Oh, no. The first row got together there a bit.
Oh, God.
Oh, my. Oh, God.
Do we have damage on?
Hey, Tom.
We
I
do
hit
have
you.
damage. Chris, what did we say?
I said I had to.
I got rear-ended real hard there. Hopefully the car feels straight.
Somehow up to 8th.
I think we have damage on
Coming for you,
50%, if I remember right.
Yeah.
I somehow kept my starting position of 5th through all that,
Nice.
but I got rear-ended very hard.
The problem with me being in 8th is that I'm now going to have to just watch as many people just overtake me. I'm going to have to make sure that they can do that in a nice, safe way. Got Mike behind me. I see you, Mike. You passed me on the left. Beautiful.
It seemed like going up the S's, I think the second row, the two of them got together, and yeah, that's not good on the first lap.
That just caused carnage.
I've jumped the curb.
Oh, Ollie Hansen's disconnected.
He was talking in one of the practice servers earlier today that he was a little nervous. And I was like, nah, we'll represent the back. Just stay in.
Right. Do you know what I'm absolutely loving about this car? Is the rear view, the wing mirrors. When you see the cars behind you in your wing mirrors, it looks so cool. It looks like something out of a documentary.
Yeah, I think Assetto Corsa has a great selection of vintage cars that just come with the sim. This is a stock, car. We're racing on a modded track. It does have a couple historic tracks with it too, Monza and Silverstone, I believe, vintage versions. So it can't recommend the ultimate version of Assetto Corsa enough, especially on a Steam sale. It's like $10 for
I think I got mine
way
for
too much
$4.
fun. Yeah, it's unreal.
David Brent has just overtaken me, close on the left. Oh god, professionalism is, and that is what I want, David Brent. That is a UK Office reference, if you guys got that. I realised that you might not watch the UK Office.
Nope.
I have seen a bit of it, but
I like the Steve Carell one, but better.
I like the Steve Carell one, yeah.
I actually am halfway through watching the Steve Carell one. I also love it. But the David Brent must be British ahead of me, because David Brent is the British version of Michael Scott. Michael Garn. Oh god. Every single time I've done that final corner by accidentally downshifting too soon and the rear end spinning out, but it kind of works.
Yeah, if you can spin yourself around the corner. Yeah, you do have to, I don't know what's on for driving aids, but in this car you do have to blip the downshifts quite a lot, so
yes,
that could also, you could be locking the differential.
I'm blipping like a lot. I'm using my clutch on the way up and I'm blipping a huge amount. So I race the Skip Barber quite a lot on iRacing, so I'm quite used to blipping.
Gotcha.
But this one needs...
Yeah, same driving style as the Skip Barber, and there's a lot of debate online about how these cars were actually driven, because almost no sim models transmission damage and mechanical wear, because all the Lotuses throughout the 60s, you could have shifted them without a clutch on up and down, but you would never do that in a car. After you do 2 laps, you would shred the gearbox. So,
right.
In iRacing, you can race the Lotus 49 and not use a clutch at all, and that's actually the fastest way. But it's because they don't have transmission damage and or anything like that to stop you.
David Brent has done me.
I'm chasing Yannick right now, and this is the common scenario I find myself in most online races.
I'm just spinning in a circle now.
David Brent's just spun around as well. Back up to 10th.
I feel like my car is glitched. Oh, no, my wheel's busted.
Oh, no.
Yep. My car is literally just spinning in a circle.
Today was not the day.
Oh, Yannick slid off the track in front of me.
Oh, I see him. I'm coming for him. I've got Jet on fire behind me.
I have a penalty for that one because there was nothing other than going back to pits for me on that.
Bad when you go into a corner and you get a yellow flag as you're entering the corner.
Yes.
What awaits me on the other side?
This is so much fun. So, David Christie, who's doing the broadcasting right now, I know will be watching with envy because I feel like this is right up his street and I feel a bit bad. I wish you were racing with us, David. You're here in spirit. Do you know what, right? So, what I noticed about historic cars, having driven a few of them now, because Sim Sunday's guests seem to like historical, hard-to-drive cars. It seems to be a theme. But what I'm noticing is that you kind of go through like a character arc with them. So they start out as these evil
Chris
people
passing you.
Yep, I saw you back there.
Go through a character arc with them?
Yeah, so they start out as these like evil characters that you'll just never understand. And then you get through this, then you get to this stage where it's like, okay, I'm compromising now. We found like a happy medium where every now and then I'm going to take it too far and you're going to punish me. And I'm going to be like, okay, I'm sorry, I won't do that again. And then eventually you get to a stage where you kind of start to understand the car and you can push it and push it and push it. And like, I don't know, like I'm starting to absolutely love this car and feel more attached to it than I would a GT3 car in ACC, which I'd probably be far more reliable in. I feel like you're getting a lot more feedback in these cars.
Yeah, I don't, I stay away from the what's better type of debate. I don't think that's what you're saying, but a lot of folks try to say like, oh, modern cars are terrible or vintage cars are so much better. And I mean, I like all of it, but there is a difference, or a big difference in the cars, obviously. And I think a lot of folks, when they go try an old car, if they do, it's kind of, oh, look at this old car and how bad it is. And they maybe crash into 2 corners and then move on. And if you take your time, though, to learn what makes a car like that different to drive, practice in it a bit, I think I almost always get the unanimous feedback that it's, wow, this is a lot of fun. There's a lot less going on. You can really focus on the driving. And pair it with the right circuit, you can have some amazing races.
Yeah, 100%. I'm absolutely loving this. So this is one of those cars where I'd love to find a community that races them, but you'd have to make sure that you put in the hours before turning up. Right?
Yeah.
I imagine if you get like a new person coming along to a league race in these, you're gonna get carnage. Well,
yeah. So we have I mentioned the Historic Road Racing Championship, and it's the league that I started a couple months ago. And we do 1 race a month, and it's all on natural terrain road circuits. So this track wouldn't be eligible for it, but it's tracks like Spa-Francorchamps. We just raced at Longford Circuit, which is a track that was in Australia. We're going to be racing at Le Mans. We're going to be racing at the Targa Florio and the Isle of Man. Really tricky tracks, difficult tracks. And it's in 1950s sports cars. And the way we've done the entry is anybody can enter, but we only have 40 grid slots, and we do a week of qualifying leading up to the race. So you have 4 days, 24 hours, or 5 days, 24 hours a day. You can go on the server and set a lap time, and we kind of aggregate all those times, and the top 40 more or less end up making it in. And it's proven to be pretty good so far. You know, make sure folks are practicing. The times get super, super fast to the point where I'm worried about actually making all the races myself. And we end up with a really good grid. The races are pretty long as well. They're 2 hours long. So, you know, the starts, we try to take it easy. It's a lot of fun.
That does sound like a lot of fun. I am falling in love with this car.
This is a good one. So, I mean, you mentioned a bunch of times, or both you and Chris, that it's hard to drive, right? It's really hard to drive. Once you get into classic cars, this is one of the easier ones, especially for the Formula cars to drive. It was a lot lower power than they were a couple years on when Formula One changed the rules to add more power. And so it's kind of this sweet spot where you have these really lightweight, lower powered, just really good handling type cars. And yeah, they're a blast to drive.
Yeah, I tried the 49 this morning, and that was a real handful. I actually found it easier on the corners, but you just have to be a lot more gentle on the throttle.
Yeah. As part of the tires are a bit wider on the 49, so you'll get a little more lateral load, but the engine capacity was doubled in 1966. So this is a 1.5 liter car, and in 1966 they allowed 3-liter cars, and it radically changed the cars. And so 66 and 67 are seen as this kind of romantic era of Grand Prix racing because it was before wings, right, but it was when they had a lot of power again. But they're so hard to drive. It's the fact that Grand Prix Legends did the 1967 season. It's a great season, but it's also one of the hardest eras to drive in because you have these high-powered, no downforce, just beasts of cars to try to handle.
Falling in love.
That's good. I told you by the end of this you might be into historic sim racing, so it looks like I might be achieving that.
I'm into the mid 121s now. I'm very happy.
I don't even know what I'm doing.
This is great. I just feel like you've got to concentrate so much. I love it. It feels so fast as well. Even though these corners are long, sweeping corners, I don't know, maybe it's the way the car is shaking, or I'm getting so much feedback through the wheel. It just feels like the sense of speed feels a lot more real in this car.
Well, if you want to blow your mind, come to this track, after we're done here today. Take one of your modern GT3 cars here, and you'll realize how tiny this track is. It's super narrow, and these cars are so small. It actually fits the circuit quite nice, but you would have a hard time passing anybody in a modern car around here.
Very upset. I was just starting to catch Chris there.
How'd you go off?
And then I just on the straight. I don't know what happened there.
You still with us, Chris?
Oh, yeah, I had to teleport to pits once because I crashed and my wheel was facing the wrong way and the car was just spinning no matter if I hit the brakes or gas. So I'm in very, very last place except for the people who disconnected. So I didn't get last technically.
Right. Let's see if I can recoup this. I'm just falling in love with this car, and then you know what happened? I got too comfortable.
It'll bite you.
And then it punished you, huh?
And all I did was dip the wheel just onto the grass on the straight, and it just span. I love the S's. You can just about do them flat out, right?
You can. Coming over the top between the S's, you have to definitely be on the right part of the track to do it. But yeah, you can get them flat in fourth gear.
I think you're about to get the leaders come up on you, Chris.
Yep, I just let him by.
This is a great turnout as well.
Yeah, I think it was mostly full then.
Yeah, I didn't see the second server because we had that server issue, but the first server was definitely full.
Yeah, it's funny because you don't see a lot. You know, if you go search for sim racing online and things, the first thing that comes up is all the modern stuff, and it's a little harder to track down some of the vintage stuff. But once you get in it, you'll realize there's a lot going on all the time of vintage events, and there's plenty to keep you busy with it. But you do have to be a bit adventurous in car choice and things. But yeah, there's quite a lot out there.
We should definitely do some kind of historical community spotlight on Grid Finder, Chris.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever that looks like.
Maybe get people out of their comfort zone, and instead of doing a ACC Invitational, do a Vintage Invitational.
That'd be fun.
Be interested in that?
The hardest part for us with Grid Finder is that, like, our F1 events are really popular, ACC's okay, but when we try to journey outside of some of that stuff, we really just don't get the turnout, and we have to switch back to, like, F1 or ACC again anyway.
Yeah. Hey, I think it can be hard to find a random group of folks that are, you know, interested in it on a whim, but there's a hardcore group that are really into it, and you know, I know I've brought a decent amount of folks here today, but when I'll go race random races, I'll just bump into the same people, and totally different sims, totally different communities, but they're also there because it's, you know, there's a group that really love this, and they'll do it wherever they can.
I think part of it, for at least for our invitationals, is that in the beginning of Grid Finder, F1 was kind of the primary thing. Realistically, it was 85% of our leagues on Grid Finder. And obviously we're trying to make it more known and get it more out there, but I don't think, I'd have to look, but I would guess that we don't have a lot of vintage leagues listed on there. So we're not like a go-to quite yet.
Yeah.
But
is your league listed on there, Jake, on Grid Finder?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Yeah, so
we'll have to fix that, huh?
Get them to list, and then, you know, maybe we can throw an event with you, a Grid Finder Invitational, because since you're in the actual community, then we can, you know, have you kind of shepherd that invitational with us, because that would be a lot of fun to get a bunch of leagues all together to race against each other in some vintage car. Is there one specific vintage car that's probably the most popular, I guess I'd ask?
I don't think there's one that's most popular. There's just so much out there, and it really depends on what your interest is, because if we're talking all of history, you've got folks that are really into like pre-war racing and racing, you know, 1930s or 1920s cars, which are a totally different thing to do.
Right.
They've got a lot of the historic racing is centers in the 60s. It seems like the 1960s are just what people think of when they think of vintage, which is a very good era. We're seeing this right now. It's a fun time, but there's just so much more out there. So yeah, I could never say that there's a specific car
that would kind of work as the most popular.
Yeah, well, and the other part is you know, racing a lot of different cars together. So doing, you know, like in our sports car series, we've got 10 different makes that are all racing together, and they all have different strengths and weaknesses, and they're not BOP'd in any way. So there's some that are just terribly slow on some tracks and work better on other tracks, but it adds a lot to it as well. And I think that takes a different type of appetite, where you're driving a car that couldn't possibly compete for a win. But you know, in 2 races time, when we race at a different type of track, it'll probably be the car to have. So you have to take the good and the bad.
Very cool.
Right.
Sounds like a lot of fun. So, Chris, be honest. Are you like, I can't wait for this to end, this is so horrible, or are you kind of thinking, oh, I'll try to do some more historic racing?
Ugh. I downshift too early.
I just saw him slide off the track there.
Oh, maybe that was the worst
corner.
time to ask that question.
I'm not racing fabulously. I could see it would take me a long time to get used to the car, for sure.
Oh, was that you on the start-finish straight there?
Oh, all I did is try to just go.
Well, one of the other
I'll get there.
choices that I had put up for the poll for this was the Maserati 61, Type 61.
I saw that.
And that's a car I'd recommend. It's a little less power than this, and it more of a sports car. It's a car that Sterling Moss was successful in his earlier career. Really good car to drive. Really well done for Assetto Corsa, and probably a bit easier than this one is.
Yeah, this one's a struggle for me.
So close to the 120s. But okay, so here's the thing, because I'm guilty of constantly looking at my times and deltas and stuff, except for on the rare occasion where I'll kind of decide that I'm going for a drive to basically like relax. And what I do is I fire up the Nordschleifer, and then I just pick a random car, and then I just go for a drive around the Nordschleifer. Sometimes in a public lobby just to see what other cars are around. Sometimes just completely on my own. Ooh! 120.6. Very happy.
There you go.
What would you... Is there a combination of sim, car, track that you would use if you were just... I don't know, you had a tough day at work and you're like, oh, I just want to chill out on the sim. I'm going to go to my old faithful. What would that be?
Yeah, the car is in constant rotation for me, and that's kind of the part of it is taking different cars out, especially in Assetto Corsa. But my track is the Targa Florio, and I was mentioning that that crazy track that was built for Grand Prix Legends. It was converted to a bunch of sims, and then in Assetto Corsa there is a converted version from Grand Prix Legends, but there's also a scratch-built version from a mod author named Abels, and it's based on actual scan data and things, and it's coming along quite nicely now. It's not 100% done, but the scenery is looking really nice and things, and to me that's such a fun track to lap at because it's so long. It's 72 kilometers, and it really takes the pressure off to you have to be in a certain mood and have a certain appetite to do competitive times around a track like that. So it's fun because there's just so much to explore in it that you can, an average lap if you're not pushing is going to be over 40 minutes. So it gives yourself a nice long time to enjoy the track.
It'll take you a long time to learn that, right?
Yes, it has. It's an ongoing thing. You never really learn it. You learn parts of it and what makes parts of it tricky and which corners that you really have to slow down for. But you're always, every lap you learn a little bit more about it, and it's one of those things you work on over time. It's very satisfying. Looks like Mr. Frank won the race. I'm sure he'll be very happy about that.
Frank. Oh, not my last lap. Oh, is the race over? Oh, the race is
over.
Oh, I was so in the zone there. I love this car so much.
That's awesome. No, I'm happy to hear that. It's this car raced in Formula One for 3 plus seasons for a reason. I think it has 49 Grand Prix victories, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a very successful car. Now, 49's too many, but it has quite a lot of Grand Prix victories.
Yeah, I'd be interested to try this on something flat, just to see what it's like, how it differs. What would you recommend?
Try it on a different track.
Yeah. So because this track is so bumpy, right?
Yeah.
Is there a track that you reckon shows another side of this car?
I think this car excels at a track like this. You can imagine. There's a very famous video of Jim Clark driving this car at Alton Park because his inputs are so smooth and stuff. And then, like, this track's got the same type of qualities as Alton Park does, right? And it, kind of like that. But I would take it to a track you're familiar with so that you can compare it to stuff that you drive, frequently. Take it to the modern Nürburgring, and then you can see really what's different about it. You'll probably also go way too deep into the first corner if you know your normal braking spot and all of that. But
yeah.
The Silverstone that comes with Assetto Corsa, the classic one, is good. Same with the Monza, but the Monza can be a bit, boring alone. No chicanes or anything back in the day. Well, nice. Let's do a little race.
That was so much fun. Thank you for opening my eyes to classic racing. I absolutely loved it. I'm completely converted. I'm going to be looking for lobbies to race that car in now. Well, I imagine each track is going to be maybe that little bit harder to learn, just because it's so different, right? If you take like, I don't know, GT3s versus GT4s, and you go to a new track in a GT4 that you'd already raced in a GT3, it's not going to take you that long to adapt. Whereas you take this car to one of those tracks that you already know, it's kind of a different story. It's almost a different discipline. I feel like that car had so much character. And I think it's because having raced GT3 cars and Formula cars almost excludes. So I love Formula 3. So I race Formula 3 all the time when I'm racing. And other than that, it's GT3.
Yeah.
This feels so different. It's almost like I've found new sim racing. I feel like maybe I'm over-egging this. It almost sounds like
it's great to hear that.
Epiphany. But I absolutely love it. I love it.
No, that's great to hear that. I mean, I think it is a really different thing. And yeah, strongly encourage folks that haven't tried historic cars before to give it a go, but you really need the context. I think if you take a random car and put it on a random track and you don't really know much about it, it can be hard to wrap your head around.
Sure.
But you'll also see, I mean, the race we just had, seems pretty good. When you get a good group of folks together that really know these cars and can race them well, you can have some amazing races because you don't have downforce or aero issues with these cars. You could follow nose to tail all day around any type of corner and it would, you'd have no issues at all. They're really small cars, so you can fit, cars side by side really easily. And the way you drive, because you need to brake very early, there's a much bigger area of outbraking that can happen. And when you get folks that are really talented with them, like the final corner at Watkins Glen's a great example. Very easy to try to outbrake somebody into that corner. You probably outbrake yourself a little bit, so you get these over-unders going, and you can have, race-long duels with folks just back and forth, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's, I'm hooked.
Awesome.
I don't know if I'm sold yet, but it would take another go. Probably, for me, I'm kind of a time trial hero. So it would be like spend a day time trialing it and just getting used to it kind of in my own element, if you will. Because that's normally how I go about learning cars and tracks, is I'll just turn on my driving playlist that I have in iTunes. It's like all my favorite songs. And then I just kind of zone out and just memorize the track and then get the feel for the car and, all my break points and all that stuff. So I could definitely see myself having fun in that car. I would have to practice it for a long time. And that's one thing that we've talked about in ACC before. While each class kind of does feel different, at least to me in my novice mind, when I go from GT3 to another GT3, there's just very slight adjustments that you have to make. Almost all the cars kind of drive the same. So it's in ACC, it's an easy game for me to be like, oh, I'll go from Ferrari over to Merc over to whatever, and I'll be fine. And I'll be able to race without really having any issues. One thing with AC is that, like with these modded cars and modded tracks and stuff, I just don't have there's no familiarity going from car to car to car to car. So it's it's a bigger struggle. It's cool and awesome, but like I like the H pattern shifter type driving in normal cars. Like I'll take a Ford Focus race all day. I love that kind of stuff. So when you get into some of the like actual formula cars and stuff, that's where I get a little bit out of my element, because I don't know if I drive differently or if I'm probably not doing all of the technical things that you're supposed to do, like blipping. I don't do any of that. I just never have. I don't know why. Because I'm a casual sim racer. That's probably why. But, and that's probably why stuff like Ford Focuses and normal everyday cars and those type of races actually yield themselves to me a little bit better. I don't know.
Yeah, it takes practice in, for any of it. You say, oh, the ACC jump from car to car. Like I'm a fish out of water when I race ACC.
That's interesting.
If I put more time into it, I'm sure I could pick it up. But I pick up ACC like once a month and race it for an evening, and then I don't touch it again. So it would be a tough thing for me to do well. And like I don't race a lot of like modern Formula cars anymore. I used to maybe a bit more, but I can't drive those at all. These days, it would take me a lot of practice to get back. So there is a driving style to the historic cars that you can learn over time. Like if we were to go drive that Maserati right now, like you would see a lot of similarities in how it drives. And so you do, once you get that muscle going, it's not as hard to go from car to car. But even then, there are, I think some differences in historic cars that require different skills. Like if the car has a lot of horsepower, it requires a lot of throttle control and a different driving approach because you get up to high speeds, but you also can spin the wheels super easily. If the car is really heavy, you have to drive it differently in the corner. So you learn some things like that too. But I would say, while that might frustrate some, that's also the draw for some others is how varied it is, and that you can really feel the difference. It's really cool when I go take out a new mod and I can feel the car is different than anything I've ever driven before because it's been modeled well, and I can experience like a little bit what it would have been like to drive that car.
I'm really curious how when AC2 comes out, how the sim racing community is going to react, and because there's some communities that are just strictly run on the mods of AC, so you kind of wonder, is there going to be the modders that go up and upgrade their stuff to be in AC2, or is it just going to be like AC is going to live forever? Because I could see it living for basically ever, especially content managers got a hold of it, and if that just becomes the launcher for AC forever. I don't know. It's almost like that game doesn't have to ever die.
Yeah. Now time will tell. I think there was a point in history where folks would have thought the original R Factor was in that same boat. Everybody was playing that game. Every mod was in it. And there was never a day where everybody abandoned it. Right. It was over time, just people were moving to different things here and there. But there's still a group that play that sim a lot. And have a great time on it. There's new stuff coming out for that sim all the time. And
what's interesting about R Factor 2? Tom, you and I have both mentioned this to each other, at least in private. The UI for that, I just can't get over getting into a race. I don't know if I'm just so used to Content Manager and then ACC or whatever. I just, for some reason, that UI is just not intuitive where I go to do things. Now, admittedly, I've only raced probably 10 tops times in that sim, but I always felt like the UI was hiding things from me, and I'm like, what am I doing right now? I don't even know what I'm trying to do. Like,
well, and I was talking
I couldn't change from the Corvette for the longest time. I'm like, I guess I'm driving the Corvette. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I was talking the original R Factor, but the R Factor 2, they did release a UI update. I can't quite remember when, in my opinion, made it better. So you might want to give it another go.
Yeah, I definitely need to. Yeah, let's go on to viewer questions. If hopefully we have a couple of those.
I've just realised what the time is, so I figured we would skip to questions. So we got a question from MJ. He would like a recommendation from you, Jake, for any multiplayer sims with AI. So this is offline racing. He wants to do a season, but not in a public lobby. So I'm assuming that's off the back of our conversation that we had earlier, where you were saying that the problem with AC is the AI. So what are your recommendations if you wanted to do a season offline?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, not many of the new sims have, good AI. Like to actually have a decent race or any kind of compelling, race with. They might be fine for like a sprint race scenario, but and I'm thinking the vintage stuff specifically. ACC's got decent AI, I think, for modern stuff. And iracing's AI is one of the best things about that sim, and it's kind of obscured behind the fact that that's a really competitive online sim. But the AI they have is amazing. It's amazing. So if you're an iRacer and you've somehow never tried the AI out, I recommend that. It's not on every car in Trak, but for the stuff they do have it for, it's really good. Yeah, it's tough. I don't actually know which sims let you do online with AI. I know R Factor 2 does, but the AI in that sim is hit and miss depending on what you're trying to drive. I'm a big fan of Automobilista 2 these days, and I don't know if if they allow you to do AI while you're racing online. I imagine they might, but there's a certain quality level with everything they've got in that sim that you can take any car to any track and you'll probably have a good time, with it. And you can't say that about many sims these days, especially with AI. So Automobilista 2 is definitely up there.
It also looks great, right? And
yeah, it's the sim I put people in if they're like come over and want to try it out, want to try whatever this crazy thing I have is. Automobilista 2 because it looks really good. It makes sense generally. For a long time, I had a bad rep about physics, and I was in that boat where I was trying it and it felt disconnected and felt weird, and I didn't like it. But they fixed it. They really have. And if you haven't given it a go in the last year, recommend it. Definitely do.
Well, looks like AMS2 is the answer then.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ideal. I think that is all we have time for because I've just seen the time and we usually go to about past. But thank you so much for your time, Jake. Really, really appreciate it. That was so much fun. I think that was the first time that I finished a race in Sim Sundays. So I'm chalking that up as a big win. And it was also the most eye-opening session that we've had. I am honestly gonna be firing up more and more historic cars, especially the other AC cars. I'm gonna try the other Lotuses, I think, when I just have I just want to relax, gonna do some laps in whatever on my own. That is now gonna be exclusively historic cars. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
No, I'm happy it made such a connection with you, and I can hit you up with some recommendations. I don't know if I'd recommend the other Lotus cars for a relaxing time, but they can be good fun.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well made.
We'll also have to keep in touch to see if we can put together that Gridfinder Invitational for vintage cars. Because, I mean, we as Gridfinder, we just want to be able to run different things more often. But what happens is, we'll throw out something that's a little bit outside of our primary sims, and then no one will sign up. So we'll just have to default back to like F1 or ACC, and it just seems like we're kind of in this lull right now where we can't find the community. So if we can utilize you a little bit to try to spread some word and get a real good Gridfinder Invitational out there to spread the vintage racing love a little bit further, that would be fabulous, But yeah. Any last things that you'd like to say, GP, before we go ahead and sign off for the day?
I appreciate you both having me on, and happy I was able to open your eyes, a bit to vintage sim racing. Yeah, it's just been a lot of fun doing all this stuff over the past few years, and excited to keep on going.
And on social and YouTube, are you GP Laps on all of those pretty simply?
Yeah, I pretty much only do Twitter and YouTube for GP Laps. I have an Instagram, but I don't use it too much just yet. But yeah, GP Laps Jake on Twitter, and then GP Laps on YouTube.
Okay, well, we appreciate you being here. Tom, any last words from you, sir?
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone from your community who came along for the race. That was the best attended race we've done. And
nice.
I was still reading from it. I absolutely loved it. And make sure to check out the episode when it comes out on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts on Sunday.
Yep. And if you have a sim racing league and you're looking to grow it by, leaps and bounds, we'll say. No, just list on Gridfinder at gridfinder.com. And, that's just kind of a central repo for everyone to find leagues. Or if you're looking for a league and you specifically want to race in one of the sims that's out there and you have had trouble finding something, go ahead and go to gridfinder.com there. We're Gridfinder TV on YouTube and Gridfinder all over the place. Yeah, that's it for today, y'all. And we appreciate you being here. We'll see you next Sunday.
See you.